Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me at another episode of Painting Masters. Today we have a very cool artist and an interesting story of how I found them. So basically, this is work by August Sandström. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it correctly. My apologies if I don't. But basically, he commented on my post on Instagram, and I usually like to check the person's name to see so that I can reply with their name. And I checked, and I saw his art. It's just beautiful. He's Swedish, mostly Nordic themes, the way he says it in his Instagram profile, which I will link, of course, down below. But this is just fantastic. So much that I like here. And we can get started with my favorite, probably. It's this scene. You know, night scenes are a thing in watercolor, and they're not always easy to execute. And this is just so good that as soon as I saw that, I knew I have to review him on Painting Masters. He also has an interesting snippet about like what motivates him and the things he like about the views, and it's really interesting. And I find a lot of similarities between us. Just the differences, the actual reference, the subject matter, the local subject matter is more of this kind of wintry, snowy scene. So this snow cold scene at night, just fantastic. I love how everything closes in on the focal point and everything around it is dark, and there are just a few lights. The technique here is actually not that easy to execute, I think. Getting that lower section wet in wet, just really, really cool effect. This really inspired me to try and go for a similar scene because I really shy away from night scenes, and this just shows me that it is possible to do it, and in a very interesting way as well. I think he wrote somewhere that like a telephone pole can be as interesting as a sunset, which I really, really liked. Kind of like how I feel about cars, Here's another one, very typical. I tried keeping the paintings in their original frame whenever I got some of them. I got from Instagram, some from an online gallery. So I tried to keep the framing there. And you see this, again, motif of wetness and snow and cold and fogginess, which I absolutely love here with all of these distant trees. Now, one thing I want to reiterate, I will remind again and again, is that overall composition, having a painting that works as a whole, is very elusive to me still, and I'm still trying to develop the skill of making that happen rather than having just a lot of cool areas around a painting. And I think he gets that done perfectly. It all communicates together and nothing is in excess. The different parts are communicating with each other, and a big thing here is that composition is just genius. Everything from the distance of the trees to the arrangement of values, something that you see a lot of Qian Chung Wei does really well, of having those uneven distances and breaking the patterns. And it's almost like, and probably everything was given thought, and then it all works together like that. Very elegant, very like, if I compare it to my own work, it's very rough, my work, and this is like on point. I love the distant trees melting away in the distance, and the cast shadows here. So it's snowy, but there is still some sun, And of course, I like the subject matter as it is because we don't get a lot of these kinds of scenes. So whenever I see them, I'm always excited. Here's another one, maybe like a field that's filled with water, swamped by water. This is just so cool. Yeah, okay. I just had I have the names of the paintings up there, but there's no way I'm going to try and pronounce all of that. But look at how he dictates those, little attention of the viewer goes by these little areas that are a little more blended, and then some other areas that are a little more sharp. And here, to me, the focal point is really that center with its strong contrast of these lines moving across. And then all of that splatter on top of it showing that it's actually snowing. That's really clever. That's a really clever composition. Now, one more thing that I like to note, and again, you never know how these things are, whether they're on purpose or not, but I would just assume it's on purpose. This center area right here, there's this tunnel that pulls us into the distance and into that maybe cabin or house, which is really genius because you have this muddy field or whatever, a pool, and if you keep going with this circular motion, that's one thing, but because he made an opening through it that could have been there again in real life, that really pulls us into the depth, and that's something that I'm also trying to learn how to better do. So this is just brilliant, and all of these small edges in the background, working like this wet and wet, it's just so cool. I almost feel like there is water on the camera's lens, and that makes some of these trees fade away. That's just genius effect. Here's another night scene I really like. I have no idea what it is. Probably like a road or a highway next to around a river, lake, could be the ocean. I have no idea, but I love this, and all of these lights that are reflected. I wonder how he's preserving the highlights. Maybe it is masking fluid, maybe it's tape, maybe it's adding them opaquely, like the snow in the previous scene. I believe like 99% was done opaquely. It makes sense, but who knows, but just really smart. And you really have to push the darks in these kinds of scenes. If you want the lights to shine, you really have to go dark on everything that is not the center highlight. And that's something that I personally am, again, having a hard time with sometimes, to really push those dark sides. It's like this sea scene, the ocean scene that I did at nighttime. It was really hard, and it wasn't even enough how much I pushed the dark. So yeah, I have great appreciation for the technique here. Here's another brilliant one. And what I'll notice is a lot of his works can be considered photorealistic, I think. Like, I could definitely, if I saw this from afar, I'd be like, that could be a photo. Of course, I'm familiar with watercolor, so I'm familiar with this effect, that those vertical lines due to the flow. But yeah, you could mistake this for a photo for sure, and I love, like, so these lines, the way I create them sometimes, if I succeed, is by really tilting the board and having the painting at a sharp angle, so that those fibers of the paint really show the veins that are created wet and wet. But it does take a lot of a very thick paint onto wet in order to really get that effect in. But that subtle contrast with the houses, that's just pure genius in this little lamp post. Just so beautiful, really making those lights shine in the sky. Not a simple effect in watercolor. You really have to go the other way around, right? Here's another really cool scene. Just that mood. I love that mood. Of course, that's a personal preference of mine, because again, we don't get a lot of it here. So whenever I see these kinds of scenes, first of all, I enjoy these scenes in general, but seeing it in a painting, it just makes it so much cooler. And there are all of these small details, the twigs coming out of the water, this little branch, and all of the lily pads, or the pads, I don't know what you call these, lilies, but still, the thing that really carries this is the overall composition is so good, all of these reflections of trees here. You don't see the trees, you just see the reflections, and the water here have this beautiful flow to them. A bit of a background here, which I love. I find a lot of Nordic themed watercolors have that kind of an effect. I don't know why, but it's just so cool. I maybe if you do it plein-air and then a droplet of snow falls on the paper, it gets like this. But who knows, right? So this is number 6. Yeah, we have quite a long way to go. So let's go through this. This I really liked. Just stood out among the rest of the paintings. I always like to find the work that represents the artist, that I feel like at least represents the artist, and then something a little different. And this was that little different. It's funny, this mushroom here in the corner, that's my favorite. But I love this. It's just such a fun subject, and it lets you go loose here. And again, notice how when things are all significant, nothing really is significant. And here, he's doing a spectacular job on that upper left corner, where all of these mushrooms just fade into the distance, and it's a very hard thing to do, to get a nice composition going that really is in balance. The focal point in the middle, everything around it supports it, but doesn't take away too much from it. Something really cool that I'm learning how to do. Here's a pile of paintings. Who doesn't like to see a pile of paintings? So I just thought it would be cool to share, because I found that on the gallery. We will go through some more. Here's a very nice scene. So a combination of all of the wetness and things we saw earlier, but then with a very late evening scene. This time of day I find becomes really hard to paint technically. I find it really difficult to paint. So doing this good of a job with the sky and the trees and the wet and wet, and that puddle really reflecting the light there. I do wonder if I actually painted this plein air or at that time, or based on a photo. I did see that some paintings were done based on a reference photo, so this could be one of them as well. And look at these little, I don't know, I guess it's houses or a village here in the distance. And I know the quality is a little pixelated, forgive you about that, but that's just so nice. The overall composition, once again, I have to revisit that idea, is so soothing and calming and balanced, right? You have these details here, and then this is just one lump of trees. And again, this thing of don't paint every tree, and this is a perfect example of it. You don't need to paint every individual tree. In fact, it's much better to treat them as one big shape. That just makes it easier to paint, better impression for the viewer. That's just how we perceive reality. You know, you can do whatever you want, but we really do perceive things as shapes. It's very hard to see each and every individual tree. It just kind of fades into the distance. So really genius. And even the composition of the puddles here is so smart. The way they become much significantly narrower the farther they go. Perfect perspective. Perfect gradual transition here from this very muted blue, gentle blue, onto the more of a bit of a grayer, I guess more warm temperature. So just really good. Here's another one that's kind of stood out to me, which I really like. I love that snowy effect. I should create that, something similar at least. But this was really nice. It looks like a large piece. Some of these look very large. Maybe there's a size here. I don't know, dimensions. 21 on 30, maybe 21 on 30 inches. I'm not sure. But the way I can tell is by the size of the cauliflowers and the amount of them. When there's so many of them in these, for example, it's a high likelihood that it's a bit of a bigger piece. Though I don't know. I'm just guessing, right? But I love that. I love this kind of a very gloomy, large building, almost Soviet type of building. Look at this side. Look at how the details are hinted at. This is so clever. You can't do too much here to take away the attention. That's really, really nice. I love that. And the same color scheme. Again, I love to find that one painting that's a little different from the rest. Again, awesome work. Look at this little tree here that fell, maybe. That's so cool. I love that effect. I'll definitely try, this inspires me to try a similar scene. I'll definitely try it out with heavy wets and wets and really try and build a composition that flows. This is so cool. I love that. I love these, the tree branches that are closer to us as well, with all of these small little twigs and branches coming out of them. It's so cool. Here's one of my favorites, Barley. That's the last one, I think, or maybe one before the last. Yeah, that's the last one. So this was one of my favorites too, and he posted a zoom in on this power line that looked so cool. Just the power line itself and how it pops against the background. That is really nice. I love these compositions that maybe give you a sense of scale really well, and this is one of them because you do see the little buildings and power lines, but there is such a small part of the scene. And I feel like in my works, I want to incorporate more of that. Just big washes that don't have too much detail in them and are really cool and foggy. I don't do enough of that. I tend to crowd my paintings with a lot of small washes. This looks super fun just to do this from top to bottom. Very clear, attractive composition. For me as a viewer, I'm just like, wow, that's really cool. I get pulled between those power lines onto the houses, onto maybe the foreground, a small detail here and there. And controlling all of these grays, by the way, isn't easy. Like getting a lot of colors that work. That's a very skillful artist right here. All of this nuance in the shadows. Look, you have a bit of a blue here, a bit of an orange in the center, a bit of a green there. That's really, really good. So I really enjoyed reviewing this artist. I hope maybe some of it can trickle down into my work and maybe inspire me to do something that's similar, not identical, and take what's missing in my work from them. I will put a link again in the description box for the Instagram and the gallery where you can see more paintings. Give him a follow. It's, I think, really worth it, really inspiring. I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, let me know your thoughts. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to more and more Painting Masters episodes, and I am trying to do as many as I can. Let me know in a comment if you have any artists you want me to review. I have a huge list I'm just going through, but let me know. I'm looking forward to your recommendations. We'll talk to you again in the next vid real soon.